Hey there, and welcome back to another Miraculous Ladybug Season 6 review. And today we're going to be talking about the latest episode to drop, El Toro de Piedra. My bad if I butchered that one. Man, what a comeback this show has made. Does anybody else feel that the writing here and then looking back at the first saga is just night and day? The finale for Season 5 was a bit of a stinker, let's be real, but ever since then, with the specials and now with the episodes, we're getting a lot of quality content. Has it all been great? No. But it's so much better than what it was before. This episode in particular seems to have a lot to talk about and is setting a whole lot of story in motion, whilst also managing to flesh out a bunch of characters all at once. In short, it's a banger. So with all that being said, let's jump into the episode. The cold open largely focuses on a very large man who's seemingly in prison and is plotting to steal the Mona Lisa. It's made very clear that he's about to get out on parole and he has a job lined up at the Louvre. Thus, he thinks it's a great idea to go and immediately try to steal the Mona Lisa. He explains his plan, which honestly sounds pretty terrible and unlikely to work at all. And it also becomes very clear he's talking to his son about being his accomplice, trying to drag him into a life of crime. By the end of the scene, it's revealed that his son is Ivan. But since the episode is bull-themed and this dude is built like a house, much like Ivan is, I think it was pretty clear already. Also, gotta say, this dude's pretty much a fusion between Tom Dupayne and Wolverine. I suppose Ivan's now the newest member of the Terrible Fathers Club. Seriously, this is a plague amongst the heroes of Paris. Adrian, of course, has Gabe. Luca and Julika have their deadbeat, who only got involved once they were nearly grown up. Zoe has her original biological dad, who seems like he doesn't care about her at all. And then also her stepdad, who's a fair-weather father based on his actions at the end of Season 5. And then on top of that, Felix's dad was abusive. For a decently small group of people, these are pretty bad odds, and we haven't even met the fathers of some of the other characters, so there's always room for more. By the way, for a supposed supervillain, his plan kinda sucks. On top of that, who the hell thought it was a good idea to give the paroled criminal in a reform program a job guarding priceless artworks and artifacts? Ultimately, yes, he needs to be responsible for his own actions, but I just wouldn't trust it. I'd think that maybe a more low-risk assignment in terms of potential reoffending would make more sense. Maybe get him a job as a bouncer or something, I don't know. But yes, as I said, the dude's plan sucks anyway. They would 100% know it was him that's the thief and hunt his ass down. He's a career criminal on parole, working at the scene of the crime. It's an open and shut case. Plus, in his cunning scheme, he intends to actually do the stealing himself. They will see him do that on CCTV. What a fool! Maybe start small on your return to crime, mate. Rob a convenience store or something. We have the intro theme, and when we return, we're at the Agreste Mansion, where Kitty section are getting ready for a performance that they have later on that day. Ivan, of course, is not doing very well, but he isn't really the focus of the scene at the moment. He's just playing the drums in the background. Instead, we follow Marinette and Adrian. Marinette goes into Adrian's room to find a new cable, where she encounters Adrian, and we finally get to have a talk about the state of his bedroom. It's not painted, not unpacked, no furniture. He tells her that with everything that's been going on since Gabe died, there's been so many decisions to make, so I suppose this fell by the wayside because he was so overwhelmed with everything. Honestly, I could try to clown on this, but fair enough, really. Although you'd think that his guardian would want him to sleep in an actual bed, not just a mattress on the floor like we saw in previous episodes. Marinette then notices that a bunch of the boxes are numbered, and Adrian reveals that they contain things from the relevant year of his life. Of course, like any proper girlfriend/boyfriend would want to do, Marinette asks to be able to go through them because that sort of thing's really fun. Okay, so first things first, Adrian's little onesie, which is an exact replica of his current outfit, that kind of thing is always funny to me, so it's kind of cute. We then get a look at Adrian's old plush froggy that even has a cute little knock-knock joke told by Gabe when you squeeze it. Here we learn that despite appearances in Werepapas, where it seemed that Gabe was always a terrible father, it seems that this was actually a bit of a later development. At one point, likely when Emily's illness hadn't properly manifested or was relatively minor, Gabe was an active parent who knew how to make Adrian laugh like nobody else. Finally, we're getting some proof that once, just once, Gabe treated Adrian well. It ties the whole story together a lot better and makes things all the more tragic. They then stumble across a photo album from when Adrian was a little boy, and just as it looks like we're going to be able to see some of these photos, Rose comes in and draws Adrian away, which gives Marinette time to go through them alone. Absolutely criminally though, we don't even get to see these pictures, just her reactions. Ugh, massive tease! A card falls out of the album that quickly becomes clear is from Gabe, with a picture of him in his white suit Alliance era. Of course, there's a letter inside and Marinette's left with a conundrum. Gabe made her promise to look after Adrian and protect him from the truth of everything. Would it be right to take that information away from Adrian? To steal his father's potential last words to him? But then there's also that risk. Gabe only changed right at the last second, and there's a good chance that this letter's from Monarch era Gabe, who's going to mess with Adrian's mind and traumatize him all over again. That isn't what Gabe would have wanted in the end. Honestly, this is such a good moral quandary. On one hand, I think it's wrong that Ladybug's hiding the truth of who Gabe was. Adrian deserves to know that. At the same time, though, he deserves to know that his father repented. If this letter is not repentance but is simply a manifesto, then I kind of understand the point of view of never sharing this. The reality is that if Gabe had the time again, he probably would have disposed of that letter after his change of heart. But he died pretty quickly. Marinette's called back downstairs and briefly speaks to Luca, who's FaceTiming from Brazil. So has he just been banished forever from Paris now? Prevent Hawkmoth going after him? Would Lila even know? Kind of lame. He's one of my favourites, so hopefully he gets a bit more screen time than just being present over video chat this season. This season has been exploring some of the minor characters in far more depth, so, hopefully he gets his chance to shine too. Gotta have faith. Marinette ducks off to speak to Natalie, who's talking to somebody else and acting very, very suspicious. Marinette barges in and Natalie quickly shuts off what she was doing and hisses at her that this is not a good time. Ooh, bit spicy there from Natalie. Seems Adrian's never going to be free of the questionable parental figures, is he? More on that later though. Back in the practice room, we get a look at this episode's B storyline. Or actually, I guess Ivan's the B storyline. Or is Adrian and Marinette the B storyline? Whatever, this is certainly the C storyline through and through, and it focuses on Julika. Luca, now living in Brazil permanently, suggests that perhaps they should start shopping around for a new guitarist that would actually be able to, play live with the band. Because to tell you the truth, the idea of having him play via video call seems terrible to begin with. Wouldn't the audio quality be far lesser? Why not get him to record his part on the songs and then use him as a backing track to play with? This just feels inefficient. Regardless, doesn't really matter because it's here to set up Julika's big moment where she steps in to fill Luca's shoes and showcases her own talent in front of everybody. We cut over to Marinette and Natalie, and yeah, the letter's a demented manifesto demanding that Adrian finish his grand work and unite the Ladybug and Cat Miraculouses to bring him and Emily back to life. As they finish reading the letter, Ivan gets in his own head and he needs to leave the house and take a breather, so he goes off for a walk, setting up this will he won't he plot, wondering if he's going to go through with what his dad told him to do. Of course, at the same time, we get a shot of the legs of somebody keeping an eye on things. I'll briefly just skip ahead and say, yes, this is probably Lila. It could be maybe Lila's goon, I don't know. But also now with the Illuminati style stuff going on, could it be one of them too? Maybe? Ugh, really, there's so much to unpack here. I'm going to have to make some separate videos on that in the next little while to try to get all my thoughts on those topics out. But for now, we got to stay on track. Natalie and Marinette briefly argue about the merits of whether they should be telling Adrian the truth, with Natalie this time being the one that says Adrian needs to be left in the dark, with Marinette perhaps thinking that he deserves to know, that this isn't their choice to make. I think they're both right in a way. He does deserve the truth, but for the love of God, burn this letter. Nothing good could ever come of him reading his father's unrepentant screed. Because if he does, then he would never ever believe Ladybug telling him that his father had changed as a person right at the very end. He'd think it's bullshit. Adrian comes in to collect Marinette as the time of the concert is fast approaching, and Natalie kind of storms out with the same bad attitude she's had all episode. Getting very curious, isn't it? As they go to set up for the concert, we cut over to Ivan, who's seeming extremely conflicted in the time leading up to this heist. I will admit, part of me wondered if he would briefly go through with it, only to reform at the end, or maybe try to go through with it and then get akumatized from all the trauma. After all, we had that person follow him, and it now seems clear that it's definitely Lila or someone Lila adjacent. We have time to build suspense where we're watching his dad waiting for the heist to begin, only for nothing to happen. Turns out Ivan left him a letter telling him he wished he could truly change and not want to be a supervillain, to be his father instead and not betray the trust they'd placed in him. Man, this whole scene made me feel very sad. Such a great storyline. Predictably, Ivan's dad rages and gets akumatized, which in turn is rather interesting, because we see Lila somewhat fumble things at first. Usually, she's ready to go with the type of Hawkmoth that specific person needs to hear, supportive or assertive or manipulative. However, she starts off here with the softer approach and is immediately rejected. It throws her off her game, and so she has to take a moment to increase her size and talk to him in the same overly toxic and masculine way that he prefers. This gets him more and more riled up and feeds into his anger that Ivan's grandma had raised him to be what he considers to be a weak and soft boy, so he gets turned into El Toro di Piedra. Pretty much a giant who can turn people into giant bulls that follow him in a herd. He also has a really big whip. Gotta say, this is a great villain design. One of the best of all time in my opinion. We follow this up with a pretty funny scene where you have a couple that looks suspiciously like aged up Adrian and Marinette standing in front of a painting of a roasted chicken with the dude crying at the beauty of the piece. Toro then blasts in, destroying the painting and turning everybody in the room into bulls before charging off in search of his son. Over at the school, Marinette and the others give a rather touching speech to Miss Bustier about how she was a great teacher to them, and it's all very nice and they all clap. Very wholesome stuff. This episode has been kind of sad so far, so it was very much needed. Can't linger on it though, as first we have to deal with the Ivan stuff. He hasn't turned up, so Milen's trying to call him, but since he's so sad, he doesn't want to answer the phone. At this point though, he's tracked down and confronted by his crazy dad, and after a brief chat where he asks him if he even read his letter, he has to run and hide in the sewer, as is hero tradition. Also, Ivan, I get you going through some stuff here, but the fact that your dad is a giant metal man riding a bull with a huge whip and a herd of other bulls, it probably means he did read your letter. Ivan sends out his distress signal just as Marinette's introducing Kitty's section to the stage, but Luca's signal drops out and of course, Ivan isn't there to play the drums, so it's not going great for the concert. Marinette then straight up bails on them just as they're trying to decide what to do, under the guise of trying to find Ivan. My god, if this was real life, you'd be having a complete panic attack, wouldn't you? You've committed to giving a concert for the brand new mayor in front of the majority of your social circle, the school faculty, and probably a bunch of other randoms too. Your guitarist is in Brazil with a dodgy connection, your drummer's MIA, and the person helping you out does a runner, leaving you and the band alone. This feels like a bad dream you'd have in high school, or even after high school. Even now, many, many years removed, I sometimes awake in a cold sweat with the crushing dread of having forgotten to do my assignments, only to realize that, wait, I'm a grown man. I don't have assignments. Oh, but it's still scary. Marinette transforms and finds Ivan in the sewers, where he has a brief breakdown talking about how he doesn't feel worthy of having a Miraculous since his father's a supervillain. He of course comforts him and tells him it's all okay, he's not his father, and yet, at the same time, it's still okay to love him and want him to change even after everything he's done. Inspired once more, Ivan suits up, and this little montage here was pretty damn awesome. I love Ivan's new design, both as a civilian and also as a hero. Just great stuff. They've really upped their game. This was then followed by a really fun and creative little sequence. It becomes clear that the only way for the concert to go on is for Juleka to play and sing it acoustic. Rose gives her a kiss for luck, and the ship at long last sets sail after legitimately years and years and years of build. And then we have a song montage where she serenades Miss Bustier as the three heroes unite to fight El Toro. Man, this was just so different to your normal episode and honestly a lot of fun. Absolute fun, that's all it was. Marinette gets a cowboy hat for some reason that seems more for style points than anything else, and the trio takes him down. Well, mostly Ivan takes him down, but the others were there too and they helped. Everybody celebrates Juleka, as they should, whilst Ivan tries to get through to his dad, who is at first kind of belligerent and angry, calling his son a weakling. But Ivan, in hero form of course, simply claims that the fact that he stood up to him at all makes him strong. Stronger than him. Big Chad energy from Ivan today, my goodness. The cops try to take Toro in, and the heroes intervene to say that he actually didn't break the law. I beg to differ though, I'm pretty sure criminal conspiracy is actually a crime. He planned a heist of the Louvre whilst on parole. He kind of does deserve the justice here. Oh well, I guess he might reform. Who are we kidding? An ending like this, he is 100% going to reform. The story then ends kind of feeling a bit mixed. I honestly don't know what the right moral call is here. On the one hand, Ivan says at the end when he's talking to them all that whilst it was painful to know his father's a villain, that in the end learning that and facing it helped him grow as a person. So this lets Marinette know that perhaps the right choice is to give Adrian the letter and let things go from there. It'll help him grow. But then she goes and talks to him, and he talks about how things had gotten so hard with his dad. But he feels like now he can remember the early days when he and his dad were close, and he can smile about them. He can be happy, which makes Marinette hide the letter. It really is a tough decision. I'm not going to condemn her for this. Honestly, the best way, once again, is to have Ladybug confess. I know I've said it millions of times in this video, but it's simply the truth. That's the mistake she's making. Not here with the letter. We then finish off with the Illuminati scene where Natalie's talking to a bunch of voices with code names. Diamond is obviously Gabe and he's dead now. And so the pursuit of the Miraculouses and the perfect world are being transferred by vote to the machine, who is probably Tomoe. At the end, after everybody else has logged off, the Wheat Stalk refers to Natalie as his daughter and tells her that he wants the Miraculouses too. So it looks like there's already going to be some double crosses in the Illuminati. Good golly, poor Adrian can't catch a break, can he? There's really so much to talk about. Natalie, is she evil now? A villain still? Who are the other symbols? What's going on? What is the perfect world? Honestly, I need time to think about all of this, so that'll probably be in videos in the next little while. For now, let's just enjoy that this was an absolute banger episode. Lots of development for multiple characters, a unique fight scene, really rich and beautiful storytelling and themes, big narrative developments and twists. Hell yeah! Season 6 is starting to cook, I reckon. But for now, there isn't much else to say, and so I'll just remind you these have all been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of this episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.